The plasma bolt missed Jake Murphy's head by inches, scorching the metal wall behind him. He dove behind a cargo container as 3 more shots tore through the space he'd occupied a second ago. The Krylath warriors were closing in, their chitinous armor clicking against the floor of the stolen freighter. "How many?" Lisa Grant shouted from across the cargo bay, her rifle trained on the doorway. 4, maybe 5, Jake called back, checking his weapons charge. 70%. Enough if he didn't miss. They're herding us toward the airlock. The Krylath were the nightmare species every civilized race in the galaxy feared. 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that could deflect most energy weapons, with reflexes faster than a striking snake. They'd conquered 47 systems in the past decade alone. Their empire stretched across half the known galaxy, built on the bones of species that couldn't fight back. But the Krylath had made one critical mistake. They'd assumed humans were like every other species they'd crushed. Lisa triggered 3 shots in rapid succession. The energy bolts ricocheted off Krylath armor, but one found the gap between chest and shoulder plates. The warrior shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and stumbled backward. Not dead, but hurt. "They bleed," Jake muttered, grinning despite the terror pumping through his veins. "That means we can kill them." The humans had been in space for only 30 years when the Krylath found Earth. The invasion fleet arrived expecting easy prey. 2 billion humans died in the first week. Cities turned to ash. Oceans boiled under orbital bombardment. The Krylath ground forces landed expecting to mop up survivors. They found humans who refused to die quietly. Jake rolled from cover, firing as he moved. His shots went for the joints, the gaps, the vulnerable points. One warrior went down with a bolt through its knee. Another took a hit to its neck and collapsed, purple blood spraying across the floor. "Left side," Lisa warned. Jake spun. A Krylath warrior had flanked them, moving with terrifying speed. Its clawed hand swung toward his chest, sharp enough to punch through steel. He threw himself backward, felt the claws slice through his jacket, missing skin by a fraction. Lisa's shot took the warrior in the eye. It dropped like a felled tree. "Move!" Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the maintenance shaft. "More coming!" They ran through the cramped corridors of the freighter, their stolen prize, and their only escape from the Krylath garrison world they'd just raided. Behind them, the clicking of Krylath armor grew louder, joined by their hunting calls, sounds that made prey species freeze in terror. Humans weren't prey. Jake triggered the maintenance shaft door and shoved Lisa inside. He followed, sealing it behind them. "Go, go, go!" They climbed through the narrow shaft, boots clanging on metal rungs. Below, something heavy slammed into the door. Once, twice, the metal groaned but held. "The bridge!" Lisa panted. "We get to the bridge? We can jump to hyperspace, if Nick got the engines ready." "He better have!" They reached the upper level and crawled out into a corridor. Empty, for now. Jake could hear the Krylath cutting through the maintenance shaft door 3 levels below. They had maybe 2 minutes. The bridge door opened to reveal Nick Cooper at the pilot's console, his hands dancing across controls. "About time. I've got the jump coordinates ready, but the Krylath locked down the navigation system. I need another 60 seconds to break through." "We don't have 60 seconds, Jake said, taking position at the door. "Then, I suggest you buy some time." The first Krylath warrior appeared at the end of the corridor. Then a second, then 5 more. They advanced slowly, confidently. Why rush? The humans were trapped. Jake raised his rifle. Lisa stood beside him, her weapon ready. Nick kept working behind them, muttering calculations under his breath. "You know what the galaxy says about the Krylath?" Jake asked, voice steady despite the approaching death. "That they're unstoppable," Lisa replied. "Yeah? You know what they said about humans before we learned to make fire?" "What?" "Nothing, because we were just another animal." "Nope." Jake smiled, cold and sharp. "Funny how that changes when you stop being prey and start being a predator." The Krylath charged. Jake and Lisa opened fire, their shots precise and controlled. One warrior fell, then another, but the others kept coming, closing the distance with horrifying speed. 20 meters. 15. 10. Nick. 5 seconds. A Krylath warrior lunged through the doorway. Jake's rifle clicked empty. He dropped it, grabbed the combat knife from his belt, and drove it up through the gap under the warrior's jaw. The blade punched through softer tissue into its brain. The warrior spasmed and collapsed. 2 more filled the doorway. "Got it!" Nick shouted. The hyperspace drive engaged. Reality twisted. The freighter lurched as it tore through the fabric of space. The Krylath warriors stumbled, disoriented by the sudden dimensional shift. Jake slammed the bridge door shut and locked it. Something heavy crashed against it from the outside. "We've got Krylath on board," Lisa said. "I know," Jake replied, reloading his rifle. "We'll handle them once we're clear of their territory." Nick pulled up a star chart. "We're heading to the rendezvous point. Admiral Peterson will want to hear about what we found on that garrison world." Jake nodded, his mind already on the intelligence they'd stolen. Troop movements, supply routes, fleet positions, information that could turn the tide of the war. The Krylath had conquered the galaxy because no one had ever fought back effectively. Every species they'd encountered either submitted or died. They'd never faced an enemy that studied them, learned their weaknesses, and adapted. They'd never faced humans. The war had been raging for 3 years now. Earth was scarred, but not broken. Humanity's colonies fought back with a ferocity that shocked the Krylath. Every battle taught the humans something new. Every defeat made them stronger. The Krylath Empire had spent 10,000 years believing they were the galaxy's apex predators. They were about to learn they'd been wrong. The stolen freighter jumped through hyperspace, carrying 3 humans and intelligence that would help win a war. Behind them, the Krylath garrison world scrambled fighters to pursue, but the humans were already gone. In the cargo hold, the Krylath warriors trapped on board hunted through the ship, searching for the humans who dared to steal from them. They'd kill these prey creatures and deliver their bodies back to the Empire as a warning. But Jake Murphy checked his rifle one more time and smiled. Let them come. The jump to hyperspace lasted 6 hours. Jake spent the first hour hunting the Krylath warriors still on board. The freighter's corridors became a battlefield, each corner a potential ambush, each shadow hiding death. He found the first warrior in the lower cargo bay, ripping through supply crates looking for weapons. Jake's shot caught it in the back of the knee, the one weak point Lisa had discovered during their ground battles. The warrior collapsed, roaring in pain and rage. His second shot ended it. 2 more to go, according to his count. The ship's interior gave humans an advantage the Krylath weren't used to. In open battle, Krylath warriors dominated with their speed and strength. But in confined spaces, human tactics and tool use evened the odds. Jake moved like a ghost through passages the Krylath found cramped, using maintenance shafts and service tunnels the larger aliens couldn't follow. He found the second warrior trying to break into the engine room where Nick worked. The Krylath's attention was focused on the heavy door, claws sparking against reinforced metal. Jake lined up his shot carefully, aimed for the neck joint, and fired. The warrior dropped without a sound. "One left," he whispered into his communicator. "I've got eyes on it," Lisa responded from the security station on the bridge. "Upper deck, moving toward life support." "Smart. Cut our air, wait for us to suffocate." "Not smart enough. I'm sealing the compartments between you and it. Drive it toward the starboard airlock." Jake grinned. "I like how you think." He moved through the ship, following Lisa's directions, using the internal cameras to track the Krylath's position. The warrior was larger than the others, probably a commander based on the scarring across its armor. It moved with purpose, studying the ship's layout, learning. The Krylath were quick learners. That's what made them so dangerous. They adapted to new threats, developed counter-tactics, evolved their strategy. In their 10,000 years of conquest, they'd refined warfare to a brutal science. But humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. Every conflict, every war, every battle had taught them something new. By the time humanity reached the stars, they'd already mastered every form of combat their violent history could devise. The Krylath were learning that humans were very, very good at killing. Jake reached the starboard corridor. The Krylath commander stood at the far end, having realized it was being herded. It turned to face him, mandibles clicking in what might have been laughter. "You fight well for prey," it said in broken human standard. The Krylath had learned several Earth languages, the better to understand the enemy that refused to surrender. "We're not prey," Jake replied, rifle-trained on center mass. "We're the species that hunted everything else on our planet into submission or extinction. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a world that was actively trying to kill us. You think your armor scares us? We evolved alongside creatures that could tear us apart. We learned to fight back with nothing but rocks and sharp sticks. You're just another predator." The Krylath commander charged, moving with blinding speed. Jake didn't flinch. He'd fought these warriors a dozen times now. He knew their patterns, their tactics, their tells. He saw the slight shift in weight that preceded the lunge, the tensing of muscles under armor. He dove left, firing as he moved. His shots weren't aimed to kill, they were aimed to wound, to slow, to direct. The Krillath commander stumbled, took 3 hits to its leg joints, and its charge became a stumble. Lisa's voice crackled over the comm. "Airlock ready! Jake triggered the emergency release." The airlock door behind the Krillath commander blew open. The atmosphere in the corridor explosively decompressed, sucking everything toward the void. Jake had braced himself against a support beam. The Krillath commander had nothing to hold on to. It tumbled backward, claws scraping at the smooth floor, finding no purchase. For a moment, its eyes met Jake's, and he saw something he'd never seen in a Krillath before: fear. Then it was gone, pulled into the vacuum of space. Jake hit the emergency seal. The inner door slammed shut, atmosphere hissed back into the corridor, and it was over. "Clear," he reported, breathing hard. "All hostiles eliminated." "Good," Nick's voice came through, "because we're approaching the rendezvous point and we've got company." Jake ran to the bridge. The view screen showed a cluster of human ships, everything from military frigates to converted civilian vessels. The human fleet, cobbled together from survivors and refugees, held together by determination and spite. At the center of the formation, the battleship Defiance hung in space, its hull covered in scars from 100 battles. Admiral Peterson's flagship, the command center of humanity's resistance. "Defiance is hailing us," Lisa said. The view screen shifted to show Admiral Peterson, a woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. "Freighter Delta, good to see you made it back. Do you have the intelligence?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake reported. "Krillath troop deployments, supply routes, and fleet coordinates for the next 6 months." They weren't expecting a raid that deep into their territory. Peterson's expression didn't change, but Jake saw the tension ease from her shoulders. "Get over here! We need to analyze this data immediately." The freighter docked with the Defiance 30 minutes later. Jake, Lisa, and Nick transferred the stolen intelligence and made their way to the operations center. The room buzzed with activity. Dozens of analysts working at terminals, building a picture of the Krillath Empire's military machine. Commander Stephen Brooks met them at the door, a tablet in his hands. "We've already started processing your data. This is incredible." They've left their entire Western Front exposed, probably because they assumed no one would dare attack that far into their territory. "They assumed wrong," Jake said. Peterson entered the room, studying the tactical displays. The Krillath have never faced a coordinated resistance before. Every species they've conquered fought isolated, defensive wars. They'd crush one world, the neighboring systems would surrender, and the Empire would grow. "But we're different. Because we're crazy enough to attack instead of defend," Lisa said. "Because we understand something the Krillath don't," Peterson corrected. "Warfare isn't just about strength or technology. It's about will. The willingness to take casualties, to sacrifice, to keep fighting when any rational species would surrender. The Krillath are used to enemies that value survival above all else. They don't understand humans because we value something more than survival." "What's that?" Nick asked. "Winning." Peterson pulled up a star chart. Red markers showed Krillath positions, hundreds of them scattered across dozens of systems. Blue markers showed human forces, far fewer in number but positioned strategically. "We've been fighting a defensive war for 3 years. Every battle, we retreat, regroup, and learn. The Krillath think we're weak because we won't stand and die like the other species they've conquered. They don't realize we're studying them." She zoomed in on a cluster of Krillath positions. "Thanks to your intelligence, we now know they're concentrating their forces for a major offensive against our colony worlds in the Centauri sector. They think they can break our spirit with one massive victory." "Can they?" Jake asked. "Not if we hit them first." Peterson's smile was cold. "We're going to do something no species has ever done to the Krillath Empire. We're going to take the fight to them. While they're gathering forces for their offensive, we're going to strike at their supply lines, their staging areas, their command structure. We're going to show them what happens when humans stop retreating." The room fell silent. For 3 years, humanity had been on the defensive, fighting for survival. Now, Admiral Peterson was proposing an offensive campaign deep into Krillath territory. Commander Brooks spoke first.
"It's risky.
"If we commit our forces to an offensive and it fails, we won't have enough ships left to defend Earth. If we wait for them to attack us again, we'll lose anyway," Peterson countered. "The Krillath are patient. They'll grind us down, system by system, until nothing remains. Our only chance is to hurt them badly enough that they decide humanity isn't worth the cost. They've never retreated from a conquest," Lisa pointed out. "They've never had a reason to." Peterson's eyes swept the room. We're going to give them one. Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet prepared for the offensive. Ships were repaired, weapons upgraded, crews trained. Jake and his team were assigned to a strike force tasked with hitting a major Krylath supply depot in the Gamma sector. The mission briefing took place in the Defiance's war room. 12 ships, 400 crew members, all volunteers. The objective was simple: destroy the supply depot and escape before Krylath reinforcements arrived. Captain Helen Foster commanded the strike force from the frigate Relentless. She stood at the front of the room, a holographic display showing their target behind her. The depot supplies 6 Krylath fleets. Destroy it, and their entire offensive capability in this sector collapses. They'll have to pull back and regroup. What's the defense? Someone asked. Heavy. Automated defense platforms, a garrison of 200 Krylath warriors, and at least 3 warships in orbit. We'll be outnumbered and outgunned. Foster smiled grimly. Standard Tuesday for us. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. We jump in fast, hit hard, and jump out before they can organize a response, Foster continued. Speed and surprise are our advantages. The Krylath think we're too scared to attack their core territories. Let's prove them wrong. Jake studied the tactical display. The depot sat on an asteroid, heavily fortified but with one weakness. The main reactor that powered the facility was exposed on the surface, probably because the Krylath never expected anyone to get close enough to target it. Question, he said. If we take out the reactor, does that destroy the whole depot? Foster nodded. The explosion would tear the asteroid apart, but you'd have to get past the defense platforms and the garrison to reach it. What if we don't go past them? Jake glanced at Lisa and Nick. What if we go through them? Captain Foster listened to Jake's plan, her expression growing more intrigued with each detail. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. It's insane. It might work. You'll need a fast ship and a crew willing to take massive risks. We've got both, Jake said. The strike force launched 3 days later. 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Gamma sector and accelerated toward the depot. Alarms screamed across Krylath stations. Defense platforms powered up. Warships broke orbit and moved to intercept. The human fleet spread out, each ship taking a different vector, forcing the Krylath to divide their attention. The Relentless and 6 other vessels drew the warships away from the depot. The remaining 5 ships, including Jake's commandeered Krylath freighter, now renamed the Stubborn, made a direct approach to the asteroid. Weapons lock, Lisa reported from the pilot's seat. 4 defense platforms targeting us. Evasive pattern 7, Jake ordered from the co-pilot position. Nick was in the back preparing the surprise they'd brought along. The Stubborn jinked and rolled as plasma fire filled the space around them. One bolt clipped their port shield, overloading it. Warning lights flashed across the console. Shields down, Lisa said, her voice tight. We can't take another hit. We won't have to. Jake triggered the communications. All ships execute now. The 5 human ships suddenly reversed course, turning away from the depot as if retreating. The Krylath defense systems, programmed to prioritize fleeing targets, shifted focus to the other ships. The Stubborn was ignored for exactly 8 seconds. That was all Jake needed. He pushed the throttle to maximum. The freighter screamed toward the asteroid, covering the remaining distance in seconds. Defense platforms swiveled back toward them. Too late. The Stubborn plunged into the depot's main hangar, a massive opening designed for Krylath cargo vessels. They landed hard, the freighter's landing gear shrieking in protest. Before the ship had fully stopped, Nick blew the cargo bay doors. 20 automated drones poured out, each carrying demolition charges. They scattered across the hangar, moving with pre-programmed precision toward their targets. Jake had built them over the past 3 days using salvaged parts and human ingenuity. Krylath warriors rushed into the hangar, weapons firing. The drones were small, fast, and expendable. Several were destroyed, but most reached their objectives, support columns, and structural weak points throughout the facility. Charges set, Nick reported. 30 seconds. Jake brought the Stubborn's engines back online. Everyone else clear? Last ship just jumped, Lisa confirmed, monitoring communications. We're alone. The 30 seconds felt like hours. Krylath plasma bolts hammered against the Stubborn's hull. More warriors poured into the hangar. Outside, the defense platforms repositioned, preparing to fire into their own facility to destroy the human ship. 5 seconds, Nick counted. 4, 3, 2. The first charge detonated, collapsing a support column. Then another and another, a chain reaction of explosions that tore through the depot's infrastructure. The asteroid shuddered. Cracks spread across the hangar floor. "Go, go, go!" Jake shouted. Lisa slammed the throttle forward. The Stubborn shot out of the hangar just as the main reactor went critical. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, a brief new sun that consumed the asteroid and everything on it. The Stubborn tumbled through space, its hull scorched and systems failing. Lisa fought the controls, trying to stabilize their spin. Jake worked frantically to restore power to the engines. "Hyperspace drive is offline," Nick reported. "We're sitting ducks." "Not for long," Lisa pointed at the view screen. The rest of the strike force had returned, their ships forming a protective formation around the Stubborn. The Relentless moved alongside, extending a docking tube. "Nice work," Captain Foster's voice came through the comm. "Now get over here before those Krylath warships decide to finish what they started." The strike force jumped to hyperspace 10 minutes later. Behind them, Krylath ships searched the debris field, looking for survivors. They found only wreckage and the bodies of their warriors. The depot was gone. 6 Krillith fleets were stranded without supplies, their offensive capability crippled. And humanity had proven something crucial. They could win. The success of the Gamma Sector raid changed everything. Within a month, human strike forces hit targets across Krylath territory. Supply lines were disrupted, communication networks sabotaged, garrison worlds raided. The Krylath, used to fighting defensive, terrified enemies, found themselves constantly reacting to human attacks. Jake's team became specialists in deep penetration raids. They hit targets the Krylath thought were untouchable, stealing intelligence, destroying infrastructure, and escaping before reinforcements arrived. Each mission taught them more about their enemy. The Krylath were formidable warriors, but they relied on intimidation and overwhelming force. When those advantages were stripped away, when they faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated, they struggled to adapt. Humans, on the other hand, specialized in adaptation. 3 months after the depot raid, Jake found himself back on the Defiance, standing in Admiral Peterson's office. Lisa and Nick stood beside him. The Admiral studied them with her piercing gaze. "I have a mission for you," she said without preamble. "It's dangerous, probably suicidal, but if it succeeds, it could end this war." "We're listening," Jake said. Peterson pulled up a holographic display. It showed a massive structure larger than any space station Jake had ever seen. "This is the Sovereign Spire, the Krylath Empire's capital station. It's located in the heart of their territory, protected by their most powerful fleet. Every major decision, every strategic plan, every military order comes from here." "You want us to attack it?" Lisa said quietly. "I want you to infiltrate it." Peterson's expression was grim. "Our intelligence indicates the Krylath High Council is meeting there in 2 weeks to plan their next major offensive. If we can get someone inside, plant a virus in their command network, we could disrupt their entire military infrastructure." "And if we get caught?" Nick asked. "Then you die and we lose some of our best operatives." Peterson's honesty was brutal but appreciated. "I won't order you to do this, astronaut. It has to be your choice." Jake looked at his teammates. They'd been through a dozen missions together, faced death more times than he could count. He saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his gut. "When do we leave?" he asked. The plan was complex and required perfect execution. First, they needed a Krylath ship, not a stolen freighter, but an actual military vessel with proper credentials. That meant ambushing a patrol and taking it intact, something that had never been done before. They found their opportunity in the outer systems, where Krylath scouts patrolled for human activity. Jake's team, aboard a modified civilian transport, broadcast a distress signal claiming engine failure. The Krylath scout approached, expecting easy prey. The transport's engine failure turned out to be an ambush. Hidden weapons fire disabled the scout's main drive. Before the Krylath crew could react, boarding pods launched from the transport attaching to the scout's hull. Jake led the assault team through the breach. The Krylath crew fought fiercely, but the humans had surprise and desperation on their side. The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the scout ship was theirs. "It's smaller than I expected," Nick said, examining the bridge. "Krylath scouts are designed for speed and stealth," Lisa explained, studying the controls. "This is perfect for what we need." They spent 3 days learning to operate the stolen scout, practicing Krylath protocols and communication procedures. Jake and Lisa underwent cosmetic modifications, wearing suits that mimicked Krylath physiology from a distance. They wouldn't pass close inspection, but at a distance, in low light, they might fool casual observers. Nick would remain on the ship, their technical expert and escape pilot. The journey to the Sovereign Spire took a week. They passed through 3 Krylath checkpoints, each one a test of their forged credentials and nerves of steel. Each time, Jake expected alarms, weapons fire, death. Each time they were weighed through. The Krylath had never considered that humans might be capable of such deception. The Sovereign Spire loomed ahead, a structure that dwarfed planets, a monument to Krylath power. Hundreds of ships orbited it, from small scouts to massive battleships. The heart of the Empire, protected by its mightiest forces. Sovereign Spire Control, this is Scout Vessel Talon requesting docking clearance, Lisa transmitted in perfect Krylath. Talon, you're not scheduled for station access. State your business. Urgent intelligence from the frontier sectors. Commander classification only. A pause. Proceed to Dock 17. Commander Harris will meet you. They docked without incident. Jake and Lisa, in their disguises, stepped onto the station. Nick remained with the ship, monitoring communications and ready for emergency extraction. The inside of the Sovereign Spire was a maze of corridors and chambers, each one packed with Krylath going about their business. Jake and Lisa moved with confidence, acting like they belonged. No one looked at them twice. The command center is 6 levels up, Lisa whispered, checking a stolen data pad. Security increases the higher we go. They made it to level 4 before someone challenged them. A Krylath officer stepped into their path, mandibles clicking. You. I don't recognize your markings. What unit are you assigned to? Jake's hand moved to the weapon hidden under his suit. If they were discovered here, they'd never make it back to the ship. The entire mission would fail. Then Lisa did something unexpected. She stepped forward and struck the officer across the face with her clawed hand, her movements perfectly mimicking Krylath body language. You dare question a scout commander? I carry intelligence from the frontier. Step aside before I report your insubordination. The officer recoiled, uncertain. Among Krylath, status was everything, maintained through dominance displays and aggression. Lisa had just out-Krylayed the Krylath. The officer stepped aside. My apologies, Commander. They continued upward, Jake fighting the urge to laugh. They just bluffed their way past security using the Krylath's own social structure against them. Level 6. The command center door stood ahead, guarded by 4 elite warriors in heavy armor. There was no bluffing past these guards. Plan B, Jake muttered. He pulled a small device from his belt and tossed it down the corridor. It landed 20 feet behind them and activated, emitting a high-frequency sound that Krylath hearing found excruciating. The guards rushed past Jake and Lisa, weapons drawn, searching for the threat. Jake and Lisa sprinted for the command center doors. Nick had provided them with a hacking tool that could bypass Krylath's security, but it needed 60 seconds to work. They had maybe 30 before the guards realized the distraction and returned. The tool beeped and flashed, working through Krylath encryption. Behind them, the sound device deactivated. The guards would be back any second. 40 seconds. 50. Footsteps in the corridor, running toward them. 55 seconds. The guards appeared at the end of the corridor, saw them at the door, and opened fire. 60 seconds. The door opened. Jake and Lisa threw themselves through, plasma bolts scorching the air where they'd stood. The door sealed behind them, heavy enough to withstand the guards' weapons for a few minutes. The command center was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and tactical stations. Dozens of Krylath worked at consoles coordinating the Empire's military operations. They all turned to stare at the 2 intruders. Nick, we're in, Jake said into his comm. Uploading now. He pulled out the data spike containing the virus, a piece of code designed by humanity's best programmers to infiltrate and destroy Krylath military networks. All he had to do was plug it into one of the central terminals. The Krylath in the command center drew weapons. Alarms shrieked. The door behind Jake and Lisa shuddered under sustained fire from the guards outside. Go! Lisa shouted, providing covering fire as Jake ran for the nearest terminal. He dodged plasma bolts, feeling the heat of near misses, hearing Lisa's shots behind him as she held off a dozen Krylath warriors. The terminal was right there, just a few more steps. A Krylath officer lunged from his blind spot, claws extended. Jake twisted, felt the claws tear through his disguise and into his shoulder. Pain exploded through his arm. He felt the data spike flying from his hand and skittering across the floor. The officer stood over him, mandibles clicking in triumph. Humans, you actually made it this far. Impressive, but futile. Jake's good hand found the knife at his belt. We're full of surprises. He drove the blade up through the officer's throat. The Krylath gurgled and collapsed. Jake grabbed the data spike and stumbled to the terminal, his left arm hanging useless. Lisa was surrounded now, fighting hand-to-hand against 3 warriors. She wouldn't last much longer. Jake plugged the spike into the terminal. Nothing happened. "Nick!" he shouted. "It's not working!" "Different system architecture than expected," Nick's voice crackled back. "I'm adapting the code now. Hold on." "We don't have time to hold on!" The door behind them exploded inward. Guards poured through, joined by more warriors from throughout the command center. Jake and Lisa were trapped, surrounded, with nowhere to run. "I'm sorry," Jake said to Lisa. "I got us killed." She smiled, blood running down her face from a dozen cuts. "Worth it, though."
The Krylath closed in.
Then every screen in the command center went dark. A second later, they lit up again, showing a simple message in Krylath script. "Humanity sends its regards." The virus had activated. Throughout the Sovereign Spire, throughout the entire Krylath command network, the virus spread like wildfire. Military communications went down. Navigation systems failed. Weapons protocols were corrupted. In ships across the Empire, Krillith crews suddenly found themselves blind and deaf, cut off from command. The Empire's military infrastructure collapsed in minutes. In the command center, chaos erupted. Krillith officers shouted at their consoles, trying to restore systems. The warriors surrounding Jake and Lisa hesitated, uncertain whether to continue the execution or help with the crisis. Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lisa's arm and ran for a side exit he'd spotted, one that led to maintenance tunnels. They crashed through the door as plasma fire resumed behind them. The tunnels were narrow and dark, perfect for humans, terrible for Krylath. They ran blindly, following the station's layout that Nick transmitted to their comms. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded as the larger Krylath struggled in the confined space. "Nick, we need extraction," Jake panted, his wounded shoulder screaming with every movement. "Already on it. I've got station schematics now that the virus is active. There's a small airlock 3 levels down. Meet me there." They descended through maintenance shafts and service corridors, moving through the station's guts. Around them, the Sovereign Spire shuddered as systems failed and backups engaged. Emergency lights flickered on and off. The Krylath Empire was dying, and it was making a lot of noise. They reached the airlock to find Nick already there, the scout ship hovering just beyond the threshold. "Come on! Half the station's security is looking for you!" Jake and Lisa jumped through the airlock. Nick sealed it behind them and punched the engines. The scout ship dove away from the Sovereign Spire, dodging debris and confused patrol ships. "They're trying to coordinate a response," Nick reported, "but the virus has them completely disrupted. Half their ships don't have working weapons, the other half can't communicate. We might actually make it out." Might. Jake lay back in his seat, applying pressure to his wounded shoulder. They'd accomplished the mission. The virus was spreading through Krylath's systems, crippling their military. But they were still deep in enemy territory, in a stolen ship, being hunted by whatever forces the Krylath could still coordinate. "Jump coordinates set for human space," Lisa said. "We just need to clear the gravity well." The scout ship accelerated, the Sovereign Spire shrinking behind them. Jake watched on the view screen as lights flickered across the massive station, systems failing, one after another. The heart of the Krylath Empire was dying. Then the pursuit began. 3 Krylath warships, either unaffected by the virus or operating on isolated systems, broke formation and gave chase. They were faster than the scout, better armed, and not hampered by a wounded crew. "We're not going to make it to the jump point," Nick said quietly. Jake closed his eyes. They'd come so far, done so much damage. The virus was spreading even now, crippling the Krylath military. But they'd die here, in the void, hunted down before they could escape. Then new contacts appeared on the scanner. Human ships, dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace around them. "This is Admiral Peterson aboard the Defiance," a voice crackled over the Defiance. "All human vessels, engage those Krylath warships. Scout Talon, get yourselves home." The human fleet swept past them, frigates and destroyers engaging the surprised Krylath ships. The Defiance itself moved to block pursuit, its massive guns hammering at a Krylath battleship. "The Admiral came for us," Lisa said, wonder in her voice. "She always does," Jake replied. The scout ship reached the jump point and tore into hyperspace. Behind them, the human fleet fought a desperate rearguard action, buying time for their comrades to escape. Some ships would be lost. More humans would die. But they'd saved Jake's team. They'd saved the mission. They'd saved each other. The journey back to human space took 2 days. Jake spent most of it in the medical bay, getting his shoulder treated. By the time they reached the fleet's rendezvous point, the reports were coming in. The virus had exceeded all expectations. Across the Krillath Empire, military operations had ground to a halt. Fleets were stranded. Communication networks remained down. The Krillath were scrambling to restore systems, but every fix the virus adapted, spreading deeper into their infrastructure. The war wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted. Admiral Peterson met them in the docking bay, her expression unreadable. Jake, Lisa, and Nick stood at attention, expecting a debrief or orders for their next mission. Instead, Peterson smiled. "Well done, all three of you. What you accomplished will be remembered for as long as humanity exists." "We just did what needed to be done," Jake said.
"Exactly. That's what makes us human."
Peterson's smile faded. "The Krillath High Council has sent a communication. They want to discuss terms." "Terms?" Lisa asked. "But you mean they want to negotiate?" "They're offering to withdraw from human space. They'll recognize our sovereignty and cease all hostile actions. In exchange, we stop our attacks and remove the virus from their systems." The three of them stood in stunned silence. The Krillath, the unstoppable conquerors, were offering peace. "What did you tell them?" Nick finally asked. "I told them I'd present their offer to our leadership." Peterson studied them carefully. "What do you think we should do?" Jake considered the question. 3 years ago, the Krillath had arrived at Earth expecting easy prey. They'd killed billions, destroyed cities, and nearly broken humanity's spirit. They'd been the nightmare that made every species in the galaxy tremble. But humans had fought back. They'd learned, adapted, and turned the Krillath's own tactics against them. They'd proven that the galaxy's most feared species could be beaten. "I think," Jake said slowly, "that we should accept. We've proven our point. We don't need to be conquerors. We just needed to show them we can't be conquered." Peterson nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that. The council meets tomorrow to decide. But I wanted to hear from the people who actually fought this war first." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The Krillath asked specifically about you three. They wanted to know the names of the humans who infiltrated their capital. I told them humanity doesn't fight with heroes. We fight as a species. But between us?" She smiled. "You're heroes anyway." The peace talks took 3 months. The Krillath were shocked to discover humanity's conditions, not just withdrawal from human space, but reparations, technology exchanges, and most importantly, a mutual defense pact. Humanity wanted the Krillath as allies, not just defeated enemies. The Krillath had never considered such a thing. In their 10,000 years of conquest, they'd never met a species that turned enemies into partners. They were learning a lot about humans. The treaty was signed aboard a neutral station, representatives from both species putting aside weapons and warfare for diplomacy. Jake watched from the observation deck as human and Krillath officials shook hands, tentatively beginning a relationship neither species had expected. "Think it'll last?" Lisa asked, standing beside him. "Maybe. Probably not forever, but for now?" Jake shrugged. "We taught them that humans are dangerous. Now we're teaching them we can be valuable too." Nick joined them carrying 3 drinks, to surviving what we shouldn't have survived. They toasted, watching as more ships arrived at the station, not just human and Krillath, but vessels from dozens of other species. Word had spread across the galaxy. Humanity had defeated the Krillath Empire. Every species that had lived in fear was coming to see the humans who'd achieved the impossible. "What do you think happens now?" Nick asked. Jake considered the question. Humanity had gone from an unknown species to one of the galaxy's major powers in just 3 years. The Krillath, humbled but not destroyed, would be watching carefully. Other species would be making calculations, deciding whether humans were potential allies or threats. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. "Now," Jake said, raising his glass, "now we show them what else humans can do besides fight." 6 months later, human colonies were spreading across former neutral zones. Trade agreements were signed with a dozen species. The Krillath, true to their word, had withdrawn and were slowly rebuilding their own systems with human assistance. And Jake Murphy, former soldier and infiltrator, found himself working as a liaison between human and Krillath military forces, teaching former enemies how to cooperate. It was strange working alongside warriors who'd once tried to kill him, but he saw the same thing in their eyes that he'd felt during the war: respect. The Krillath respected strength, and humanity had proven they possessed it in abundance. One day, a Krillath commander approached him after a joint training exercise. "I fought at the Gamma Depot," the commander said. "When you destroyed our supply lines," Jake tensed, unsure if this was an accusation or a threat. The commander continued, "I lost many warriors that day. I swore revenge against the humans who had the audacity to strike so deep into our territory. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. But now I understand. You weren't striking from weakness or desperation. You were showing us that nowhere was safe, that you could reach us anywhere. It was a lesson we needed to learn. And now, Jake asked, now I teach young Krillath warriors about human tactics. I tell them about the species that refused to surrender, that fought when fighting was hopeless, that turned defeat into victory through cleverness and courage. The commander extended a clawed hand. I tell them about the species I'm proud to call allies. Jake shook the offered hand, feeling the rough texture of Krillath's skin. 3 years ago, this would have been unthinkable. Now it felt natural. The war was over, humanity had proven themselves, and the galaxy would never be the same. But as Jake walked away from the training facility, heading home to a dinner with Lisa and Nick where they'd laugh about old missions and plan new adventures, he couldn't shake one thought. They'd matched the galaxy's most feared species. They'd proven humans belonged among the stars. The question was, what would they do with that belonging? Time would tell, but Jake had a feeling humanity would surprise everyone, including themselves. They always did.